All right, all right, all right. It's Philip here from Toon Tactics TV. We are decoding the transfer window, this winter transfer window, doing our best bit to give you what my thoughts are, what's happening in the transfer window, what are the what's the likely things that Newcastle trying to do, how they're trying to build their squad, um, what is happening. Obviously, as I was preparing this, we've got news that Kieran, there's bids in for Kieran Trippier, potential bids in for Callum Wilson and other players as well. This is Joe Linton signing contracts, and a lot of the content creators have really provided really good and comprehensive information on that. As I was planning this, I thought I started looking at the team and the squad itself, and I wanted to come in from that angle. We know that Newcastle United, our owners, Dan Ashworth, Eddie Howe, all think 3, 4, 5 windows ahead. And so, me as a fan, I can only think of this window, but also the summer window ahead, as I believe what's going to happen in the summer window has a bearing on what's happening in this window right now, but also obviously what's happening on the field itself, that with the amount of injuries and the sale of different, kind of, no one saw Kieran Trippier sale coming up. That also opens up different kind of opportunities for Newcastle United. So what is Newcastle United going to do going forward? And so I've created slides of the team, of the squad, and thought about what Newcastle are likely to do in this window and potentially what the summer window itself would look like. I think, for instance, the aims for this summer window, yes, I know some people feel like that the owners, maybe even Eddie Howe, have written off this season. I don't believe that. I do think that Europe is still the aim, and Europe is still more than possible. And for people that might be shaking their heads, might be thinking, no way, just remember that when the owners came in, Newcastle had not won a game in, was it 10 plus games? I'm tempted to say 14 games, and that no team had ever done that and not been relegated. Have we not only just survived, but we flourished and we finished 11th, and we went on a form and on a run that would have that is the same as a Champions League team does, and that we know that obviously that followed into the next year where we actually did finish in the Champions League. So with the added experience, with the added quality in our squad, yes, there's injuries and stuff like that. I don't see why we can't do that. And speaking of injuries, and speaking of the squad, I want to show you guys the good news, the positive news that we've had over the return of players that is happening over the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks for Newcastle United. I'll share it with you now. So there we have it. We have, as you guys can see on my screen, we have it. We have here. Oh, I've gone back. I've gone forward. I've gone to Joe Linton. No, we're going here. We're going here. And that we have here is Murphy, Wilson, Willock, and Barnes, all due back within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Got you guys. My thing is moving side to side. As you can see, we've got Murphy's already back in training. So what is, I'm not sure if that means he's going to be back in the next week or so. We have Wilson hopefully back by the Villa game. Willock back in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and Barnes is 1 to 2 weeks away. This is obviously according to Craig Hope. So that's really, really positive news, and I think will have a bearing on how Newcastle go about in this transfer window going forward. Because of players coming back, it's going to affect, players getting injured first of all affects how you go about the transfer window, but also the fact that you've got players coming back that also adds to it as well. We'll be missing Murphy, we'll be missing Wilson, we'll be missing all Barnes, all of them, and so that leads me on to, how will this affect the team? How will this affect how the owners act in the transfer market itself? And so I want to go to the next part. And so the Trippier news is obviously, before, as I was gearing up to get to you guys today and record this, I was just thinking, there is almost no possibility. There is actually no limit, excuse me, to what could happen and what could transpire in this window. So, but I've tried to be as, I don't want to say realistic, but because at the end of the day, what does that mean? If I were to say to you that we're going to be potentially selling one of the best right backs Newcastle has ever had, our captain, our leader, would you have said to me that I'm being realistic? So it's very, very difficult to tell what is realistic and what is not. Hopefully this is, though, and this is obviously I'm looking at, oh, that's the one ahead. Sorry, wrong one there, guys. Let me get this for you. Yes, as I was saying, what is realistic at the end of the day? Kieran Trippier potentially going. We've got the Bayern Munich representatives already here at Newcastle. I don't see how they come all the way to Newcastle and leave empty-handed. I don't see that happening. And so with the changes that I have made, I factor that in, and I'll share with you guys now as I've got this up. Taking a little while, but we'll get there eventually. I'm still learning how to get this on StreamYard, and here we go. So, right, so this is what the team would look like essentially with our players back. I have, as you guys will notice from right away, I've put Livramento at right back with Kieran Trippier going. Now, I could be wrong on this. Fine. I wouldn't mind being wrong on this. I'm just factoring in everything that I've told you guys. The Bayern Munich reps are here in England. The Kieran Trippier is returning from his holiday in New York. It sounds like the player is willing to go. It's just about whether Bayern Munich will meet our demands. And so, but starting from the top, as I always like to do, I think having Barnes back, you've got now a competition and depth on the left side with Gordon there, which would be really good, and have some rotation there as well. Wilson back again as the same for between him and Isak, but again, there's rumors that Atletico Madrid have put in a bid for Wilson that was rejected. But I'm sure once I finish recording this, well, I don't know. Once I finish recording this video, I could get myself on X and then see all those rumors about Wilson are untrue. He's staying. He's going to be here. In fact, he's renewed his contract. He's here for the next 2-3 years. But that's why I've kept Wilson in here. Because there are no, as far as I know, there's no Atletico Madrid reps here in England trying to get Wilson to sign for them. So I've kept Wilson, still good depth for Isak, as we know of Isak been incredible for us. One shot, one kill Isak, but by the 65th, 70th minute, he's absolutely legless, especially in high quality games. And so it'd be great to have Wilson come off the bench, as it will be for Barnes to come on for Gordon. And Gordon has been absolutely phenomenal for us. Incredible goal contributions. His best has been in the Premier League. And it's just going to add just a lot more quality and depth to our attacking line. Jacob Murphy coming back and supporting Almiron and adding a little bit of alternative option for us going up front with his right foot. We know that he's got a good right foot. I was going to say good right foot crossing in, but also his work, his ethic, and sometimes his goals and assists really, really help us. It'd be great to have him back. And so now our front line looks a lot more healthier, a lot more balanced. And this is obviously at the end of a 2-3, possibly 4-week period is how it would look like. And so I've put that in there with the mind of what's going to happen in the transfer window, and I've been as reserved as I could be. But again, whispers around Wilson, also whispers around whether Miguel Almiron is going to stay. But again, there's no reps from different clubs here in England, as far as I'm aware, here trying to get Miguel Almiron's signature. And so I've put this as it is for now, with those players there. Now, moving into the midfield itself, I've got obviously Joe Linton's not there, and that's not because of his contract talks or anything like that. I'm confident without any information or anything like that. I'm just confident and I'm hopeful as a fan of Newcastle United, but also as a fan of Joe Linton, that we can get those contracts sorted out. The fact is, Joe Linton is out for the season, and so he's not obviously on the bench. He's not on the squad, and this is our midfield as it stands, with Longstaff on the left midfield, Miley on the right midfield, and Guimaraes making up the number 6. But we know that we play. These are all CMs. These are all central midfielders, and Willock is obviously there, who's coming back in the next 1 or 2 weeks, adding that depth from the left midfield side of things. Let's see how he'll be able to road. Would he have as a fluid partnership with a Gordon or Barnes, as he did with Joe Linton, where they interchange between themselves really good, interchange in attacks, interchange in defensive duties and their recoveries, their athleticism, their driving of the ball forward is exceptional. Would it be the same with a Barnes? Would it be the same with a Gordon? I'm sure it'd be slightly different. They've got slightly different things in their games and what they can do. But we know that Sean Longstaff isn't very good on the left side of the midfield, and he hasn't been very good in general as of late. And that's what I've put. And I think it's telling that it's Lewis Miley who's favoured in Sean Longstaff's preferred position by Eddie Howe. That is telling, and it shows me that Lewis Miley is already proving that he's possibly either on par or getting to, or possibly even past Sean Longstaff's level. And I wouldn't be surprised this midfield being a Willock on the left, Guimaraes in the centre, and Miley on the right. This is before any transfers, and I believe the midfield, and as we know from the rumours, and as I'll show later in the next slide, that the midfield is really the centre of attention for this transfer window. The priorities are the midfield, that even if Kieran Trippier does get sold 10, 15, 20 million, that money is going to be poured into a midfielder or midfielders for the team. You can see the lopsidedness already compared to the forwards, that's where it's missing. And with Longstaff not playing well, doesn't play well in the left midfield. Willock, although we're more than happy to have him back, he's had really, as far as I know, he's had at least 2 serious injuries back to back this season, and he's not been reliable for us. And so that's another big reason why Newcastle are going to prioritize that midfield. And when one of those midfielders or midfielder comes in, I see Longstaff rather than Miley on the bench. I think Miley, as from anyone who's heard me, I don't like to. I rate him really highly. I was wondering when he first came in, he was reminding me of Lampard. He was reminding me of Carrick. He was reminding me of. I think he's gonna, God willing, all things work for him. I think he's gonna mold into a Michael Carrick type of player. We know how good he is in the final third of the pitch. His assist to Joe Linton against PSG. His assist against Chelsea for Isak. But he's also his decision making, short passes, long passes, looking to break the lines. He's got good recovery pace. He's got good athleticism. He's only 17. He's already 6'2", 6'3", and he's only 7. He's only going to get bigger. He's only going to fill out. He's only going to get stronger. To me, he is what Phil Foden is to Guardiola, is what Louis Miley is to Eddie Howe. He's going to grow up in our system. He's not going to go out on loan in the summer or anything. He's going to stay within the team, and he's going to continue to grow and fill out under the team, and he's going to be there for us. And I think it's telling, like I said, that he's already playing in the right side of the midfield, and Eddie Howe's chosen to put Longstaff on the left side of the midfield, I think is telling. And Bruno's been exceptional this year, and he's going to be obviously bringing up that rear, but he needs support, he needs protection, and that's where again we'll go back into prioritizing. And with the rumors that we've had over Calvin Phillips and Onana, we'll show them in the next slide what that would mean for the squad. And I think that's will be the focus for it. The defense, I've got Byrne, Botman, Shaw, Livramento bringing up our defense. Livramento's a starting right back. Like I said, I've chosen to take Kieran Trippier off because at this moment in time, I feel like there's a good likelihood that he's not going to be a Newcastle player come the end of the transfer window. So I've taken that step to say that Kieran Trippier is not going to be there, and Emil Kraft will come in and rotate with Livramento, or at least be a backup to Livramento. Livramento's been exceptional for us this year. He's passing, he's driving with the ball. He's just been a quality. What a successor! What a successor we have to Kieran Trippier, who is still our captain, who is still quality. I'm talking like he's already gone. Who is still quality. What a successor we have, and what a great piece of business we've had. Again, talking about rumors, Jamal Lascelles, there's rumors that Besiktas have put in a bid for him that has been rejected. This was reported by a Turkish journalist. I can't remember if he's a Besiktas-linked journalist. But again, is Jamal Lascelles going to be there? Are we going to lose both Jamal Lascelles and Kieran Trippier, our captain and vice captain, or whoever that is? But our joint captains, our leaders, are we going to miss them? Does that mean we're going to, how's that going to affect our transfer business going forward? I think again, even if Jamal Lascelles goes as well, that money is going to be poured into a left midfield player, into the midfield as well. Dan Burn at left back and Lewis Hall. I'm unconvinced people know that Lewis Hall is a left back. At Chelsea, he's been a defensive mid and left side of midfielder, sometimes at left wing. And they discovered almost towards before he left that he's decent at left back. He's not a natural left back, and I know that Eddie Howe's got a history of. We know how he is. He takes time in integrating new players into the team, whether they're Premier League or not Premier League. They take time. We know, for instance, what's happened with Anthony Gordon, how he started off, that epic shoving away of Eddie Howe's hand after he was substitute at the Brentford game, and we're thinking, where's this gonna go? Because it cost us 45 million. 6 months later, a tournament with the under 21s, which they won the European Championships. He took that form into the Newcastle game, into Newcastle season, and it's been absolutely incredible for us. I'm sure his 10 plus goal contributions, assists, and goals for us this season. I haven't got his record up right now. He's been exceptional. So I said all that to say this, that the same could be for Lewis Hall. And I could be wrong, and I want to be wrong. I just don't think he's even the same build, the type of build that you'd want for a left back. If you look at Livramento, that's 6'1", great defensively, has mainly for most of his career so far played at right back, for Southampton, for instance. He's a certified Premier League right back. Lewis Hall isn't. And so I just don't know. For 35 billion, I just don't know. But it's likely that I think Newcastle probably, as journalists have said, that the Newcastle will likely make that move a permanent move, and that would free up another loan space, ability for Newcastle to loan a second player in this transfer window, which has a bearing on what I'm going to discuss next in terms of how Newcastle do their transfer business going forward. But as it stands, Lewis Hall, Jamal Lascelles, Kraft will be the backups to our defense. But there is obviously question marks over Jamal Lascelles, in particular, with the bids that have been coming into him. But obviously the midfield, as it stands, is a main priority. And so so what does that mean? What does that mean in this transfer window? What does that mean in terms of how Newcastle maneuver? Who do they get? And is it going to be loans? Is it going to be permanent transfers? Is it going to be a bit of both? I think that let's find out. Let's move forward. So get this up on the screen. Right, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. So let me get this up for you guys. Yeah, here we go. Share. Right. So I've put make it, is this, let me see, is this full size? Have I got this guy as full size for you guys? End of transfer window. Here we go. Let me get this full size for you guys. Here we go. Right. So I've put, with all, again, transfer rumors are transfer rumors. I could be totally wrong on this. And I'll mention Calvin Phillips as well. I've put Onana in our central midfield. And I think at the end of the 3-4 weeks, and I'll go into that in depth, I think, because I think there's a strong possibility that we can both get Calvin Phillips and Onana. But if you look at us, I think after 3-4 weeks of our injury, of our players back, and I think this might be the vision for what Dan Ashworth, our owners are seeing, with Barnes back, with Willett back, I think you'd have Barnes, Isak, and Gordon. Gordon going to the right, Barnes on the left, Isak obviously through the middle. That'd be great to have as a front three in the next coming weeks, and attacking the last 13, 14 games this season with most of the top 6 out of the way, especially away from home. I think we can really attack the season. That's, like I said, I believe we can turn the season around. We've done it before. We've gone 14 games without a win when the owners first came in, and they said that no team has ever even stayed in the Premier League not winning a game after 14 games. We not only stayed in the Premier League, but we showed Champions League form, finishing 11th and taking that into this next season. And so front three, heart of Barnes, Isak, and Gordon, with Joe Willock on the left midfield. Gomes pushing up into the 8, possibly in the 10. I think if we get a Calvin Phillips as well, having Onana and Calvin Phillips maybe in the pivot 6, we'll have Gomes as a 10. But as it stands, I have Joe Willock, Onana in a 6, and Gomes. Focusing on Onana, obviously he's been in the main press and the news. That Newcastle are certainly considering. I can't remember if there's any bids. I'm sure by the time I finish this video, I'll look on X, bids made, maybe even bid accepted, and or maybe totally denied. I don't know. But I think there's a focus on Everton, especially. Again, they've been charged for breaching the FFP. They're in a very vulnerable position, and I think. I think they may be forced to sell rather than wanting to sell. Onana, 21, 22, a rising star, I think, in the Premier League, has been looked at by a number of clubs, including Barcelona. I've read scouting reports from Barcelona fans and Barcelona journalists. So they've been looking at him. He's in the mold of a Joe Willock and a Joe Linton, but he can play number 6 as well. But like I said, we buy CMs. We don't buy specialist number 6s or specialist number 8s. We buy CMs who have, or central midfielders who have qualities that make them better but make them more suitable in different parts of the pitch, but they can play in various places. So Onana, with his 6'4" physicality, his love for tackling, his pressing, his energy, his ability to take the ball and drive it from one end of the pitch to the other, is exceptional. Now, he's no Pirlo with the pass, and you can see YouTube clips of him, doing diagonals. That's not mainly his game. He prefers his high, so his passing percentage is very high, mainly because he's quite safe with his passing. He does mainly side to side passing or back to the centre backs. But I think with a Bruno Gomes next to him, with a Joe Linton next to him, for next season especially, but with a Bruno get next to him or Joe Willock next to him, especially Bruno, who wants the ball, he demands the ball. Onana would have that experienced partner next to him doing that. The main thing for Onana is breaking up that play, covering and recovering for protecting Bruno. Bruno hasn't got the recovery pace. So if Newcastle lose the ball in the attacking third of the pitch, Bruno doesn't have the recovery pace to chase back. Though we've seen him do it time and time again, Onana does, and he has a good tactical and positional brain, and he'll be able to stop and sniff out attacks. So whether Newcastle are being pinned back, his frame, his strength is there. He becomes almost the third centre back for us. Or when Newcastle are pushing forward, but need to cover up there, but need to make sure that they are not vulnerable to the counter attack, as we were to Nottingham Forest in particular, as we were to that play from De Bruyne. I think if you have an honor there, that doesn't happen from De Bruyne, and so I think Everton are going to. I think he's on transfermarket.com for 50 million, and then with the sale of Kieran Trippier, that looks like is very possible, and the sale of others, I see Newcastle putting in their money into that, and they'll be even more successful if they manage to get a loan with an obligation to buy in the summer. Calvin Phillips, we know the news of Calvin Phillips. There's like 6 clubs that are after him, including West Ham, and they've got who are looking to purchase him. And that might be because Paqueta might be on the way to Man City, so there might be a bit of a chain there. But as the journalists seem to be reporting or are reporting, is that Calvin Phillips wants to go to Newcastle specifically, and I don't blame him. His family are in Yorkshire. That's only an hour train journey from Newcastle. But also, he's seen that Eddie Howe's an exceptional coach. He's made Joe Linton into an international player. He's changed the forms of so many players, including Shaw, including Almiron, including just literally most players have been blessed to be under the tutelage and have been improved under the tutelage of Eddie Howe. And if Calvin Phillips has any ambition to make it into the Euros in this summer, Eddie Howe is the man to make it happen for him. Plus, as you guys have seen and can see, we have a lot of vacancies in the midfield area, and Calvin Phillips will be most welcome there. Calvin Phillips is more in the mode of a Bruno Guimaraes. I'm not saying that he is Bruno Guimaraes, but his profile, he can take the ball back to goal. He loves to pick up, as he did for Leeds. He loves to pick up the ball from the centre backs and to either spray it, long balls, got decent long balls on him, short passing, is press resistant, or he can drive with it as well, but he can dictate the play. So he's got that he's in that same mode of a Bruno Guimaraes. So a little bit different to an Onana who plays it safe and prefers to drive with it. Calvin Phillips has got that press resistance around him and can take on the ball back to goal. So, but it might also be available if he continues to push for Newcastle United. There's a possibility that we can both get in a great ideal world that we can both get Onana and Calvin Phillips. Maybe one for a permanent straight away, or maybe 2 for a loan obligation to buy. I think that would be great. And our midfield problem, at least for this winter, would be very much resolved, and we'll see a lot more, and it will help us to attack the final 15, 14 games of the season. I've kept the defense pretty much the same. Obviously, Remento, Shaw, Botman, Dan Burn. Our bench with the additions, if we had an Onana, and we could have a Calvin Phillips. I've refrained from including Calvin Phillips just now. It could have either been Onana or Calvin Phillips. It would be great to have them both. I've tried to be reserved. We'll see how that goes, but the bench looks a lot more healthier. Louis Miley can be in rotation with Bruno or Onana. Sean Longstaff the same. Callum Wilson rotation with Isak. Almiron in rotation with Gordon. And Jacob Murphy, I forgot to include Jacob Murphy, also adding kind of that rotation to the team, to the squad. Lewis Hall, Kraft, Livramento, and now the team can get going again, and maybe that could spark our season into life again. And so I think that's what the owners are looking at. I've mentioned Calvin Phillips. I've mentioned obviously Onana. I think that's where the owners are aiming at in terms of that midfield area. But I think with the sales that we're hearing happening, like I said, the potential bids to for Jamal Lascelles from Besiktas, Kieran Trippier, the whispers. I can only see whispers for Miggy Almiron. Um, um, there could be potential for more signings to come in. I think there'll be likely to be 2, and that's mainly because of the injuries that we've had. And Newcastle owners are really going to try and get stretch their money as far as they can, and they're going to look for loan obligations. If they can get 2 loan obligations of Calvin Phillips and Onana, for instance, in this scenario, I wouldn't be surprised then if they'll invest that money from Kieran Trippier or whatnot into another player, and maybe for this window. But I think they're looking at the summer window, and here we're going to look at the summer window, as it will have some bearing, quite a lot of bearing actually, into what we're seeing now in the transfer window itself. But I think Newcastle owners have had to pivot with what's happened with Kieran Trippier. They've had to pivot with what's happened with our injuries. They've had to pivot with the potential players that are available to them. And so this is from my opinion. I think before even this window hit and all these other things have happened, I think Newcastle owners, the recruitment team, they come into this window with money available to them. I know that Darren Eales came out with statements and the potential of player sales. I think that's because and that frustrates and provides and gets a lot of anxiety for the fan base. I've been blessed to, especially in the last year and a bit, of watching guys and content creators, but especially like the likes of Jack Tolbert. Some of you guys may know, I think is exceptional. If you don't know him, check out his YouTube channel. The way he reads news, the way he reads news articles, he thinks of the audience. He shows, it kind of explains the tone of a journalist, what's likely to be true, what's not. Who, if someone has said something, why have they said it to? Who's trying to listen? Because I kind of now look at news articles, me personally, through that lens, I feel a little bit more calm about the situation. So, for instance, Darren Eales, I know that a lot of people, understandably so, are frustrated or anxious about what he said, having to sell players, big players, and what that led to. The rumors around Isak, rumors around Botman, the rumors around Bruno, and those who have been rejected. I don't think Darren Eales was looking at those players that are likely to be sold. I think they knew that Kieran Trippier's sale was on the horizon. I think they knew that Callum Wilson sale was on the horizon, the potential of Miggy Almiron and Jamal Lascelles. And so he's already preparing the fans for that. But I also think that that message that he gave was to not only to, so he's preparing the fans and tempering expectations, but I think and that was one of the main parts of his message. But I think the other part of the message was to football agents and to potential selling clubs to say, we're not going to spend 100 million on a 50 million pound player. We have FFP this, FFP that. We can't do it. In order to do that, we're going to have to maybe sell one player, buy one player, sell one player, buy one player. Or if we can get a loan, can you give us a loan? What did Eddie Howe say? We haven't got friends in here in the UK, in the Premier League, to get loans. So the idea being that, if you're going to buy something, they can't come into a transfer market, showing their hand and saying, look, we've got this money to spend. We're billionaires, we can do this or that, because then the prices will get raised. But then you also don't come in as I heard the analogy, I forgot who said it. You don't go to a supermarket hungry. Don't go in looking desperate. People can see that we've got 13, 14 injuries. They can see that we need a midfield, and the people keep banging on about it. So if you're a club with a midfielder that Newcastle have approached you, and you see the injuries, you're going to say, that 20 million pound player, how about 30 million? How about 35 million? We know that we need him. Newcastle can't show themselves to be desperate. They'll say, look, we need this player, but we're subject to FFP. Look what's happened to Nottingham Forest. Look what's happened to Everton. Look at the trial that's happening with Man City. So I think that's the message that Darren Eales is trying to put across to potential agents, to potential selling clubs, in order to protect themselves from being overtaxed by certain clubs. And look, it saved them money. For instance, Anthony Gordon last year, you guys would have seen from the documentary. Um, um, Everton were looking to sell him for 60 million. At a time, there was a time where Chelsea were ready to buy Anthony Gordon for 60 million. We got him for 40 plus 5 million in add-ons, 45 million in all. So we saved 15 million. Remember when Man United tried to loan us Jesse Lingard for 6 months for 12 million pounds, and we said no. Now imagine just in those two instances that Newcastle got both of those players, we would have been 20, add the 15 million for 60 million from Anthony Gordon with the 12 for Jesse Lingard. That's 27 million. That's 27 million that Newcastle United saved by not only giving out the narrative that they're subject to FFP and they haven't got money to spend, but sticking to it. And that's 27 million that we would not have to been able to spend in this window. And so I know that sometimes Newcastle, the messages from Darren Eales and the owners frustrate and bring anxiety, but I look at it from that angle, and I prefer that rather than being a Chelsea and spending 20-30% more for a player. I prefer that than what Man United, where they could have bought Anthony, and Man United fans relegate against this. They could have got Anthony for 40-45 million, ended up spending 80-85 million player for a player they say is the worst signing they've ever had. I don't want you, and now they themselves have to loan players and haggle, and this is big old Man United. I don't want Newcastle to be in that position before we've even won anything. So sometimes the Newcastle owners are a little bit too good at selling themselves as that club that hasn't got any money. So I said all that to say this, that this is, I look at it through that lens. I anticipate that in my reserve judgment, I think we're going to get up to 2 players. I think, but I'll show the last slide where I look at the summer window. So I said that to say this, going into the summer window and how it impacts this, because there's a potential that we could buy more players in this window. But I think, as I said, they look 3-4 windows ahead. I'm looking into the summer window itself. But I think going into this at the end of this summer window, I think this is how our squad, our team could potentially look. So let me get this up. All right. Summer transfer window. Right. So hopefully you guys can see this. Yes, you can. So I'll start from the top as I always do, from the forward line, for instance, and I'll talk about the players that I think, the rumors around the players, and we know there's hundreds of rumors. I've picked out the players that I think are the best that I personally, me Philip from Toon Tactics TV, would like for Newcastle. So obviously Elliot Anderson is back. I've put him as that left-sided midfield between Barnes, Elliot Anderson, Joe Linton, and Willock is a pretty strong side of our team. However, it doesn't go without its flaws and issues. Barnes obviously would be the number one of that pecking order. I think the main competition will be between actually Joe Linton and Barnes for that left wing. I've put Elliot Anderson there as his preferred position, but I think the main competition will be between Joe Linton and Barnes. And that's healthy. There isn't a drop off. There isn't a huge drop off in that competition. At the same time, we know that, for instance, Joe Linton and Joe Willock, play really well in the way they together on that left wing, left midfield positions, how they interchange between each other in attack or in defense. Their athleticism and the strength they show in their defensive duty and recovery play, and how they even cover for Bruno is exceptional. And they're driving with the ball. They're so hard to stop. They change the flow of the game for us, but they play really, really well together. So there's that option for them, as well as the Joe Linton and Barnes rotation, and Joe Willock as well. I think Anderson, and we saw Anderson in the season before his injury, he was really beginning to find himself and get that groove. And we're thinking, can he really state his place in this team? But with the players that are going to come in back from injury, but also the transfer window, out of this lot between Barnes, Anderson, Joe Linton, and Willock, I think Anderson will find himself at the bottom of the selection criteria of this. But all in all, that side of the pitch is quite strong. Obviously, we've had conversations around Joe Linton's contract. By this summer, he'll have like a year left. What would that mean? He wants this money. The ownership is only apparently on par with Bruno. The ownership are only prepared to provide this money. There's these clubs that are looking at him, Atletico Madrid and clubs in Germany. Again, all rumors and suggestions, but you wouldn't be surprised because Joe Linton is a great player. And Eddie Howe has helped the world see how great a player he is. I've still included Joe Linton because I still think there's a high probability of him staying at Newcastle United. So he's there. Joe Willock, my main issue and concerns are around his injury. He's had two serious injuries this season, and he has not been playing at all. There's even question marks whether when he does return, is he going to last the end of the season? I hope he does. I hope he kicks on from here. He's still young. He's still fresh. He's still strong. And what he adds to the team is really, really good. So on the face of it, there isn't much of a drop-off in quality between Barnes, Joe Linton, Willock, and then Anderson. But there are concerns around, obviously, contract talks, injuries. Joe Linton is obviously out for the season himself, I can't remember, it was a torn hamstring and whatnot. So there's injury concerns around there. So do the ownership have to look at getting another player on that side as well? As it stands, I don't think it's a priority. Wilson Isaac. Now, again, apparently there's bids in for Wilson from Atletico Madrid. Again, it's rumors. I don't know how likely it is that he's going to leave. I've still kept him on in the summer because unlike Trippier, where there's representatives from Bayern Munich and it's all well documented by the journalists, unlike where it's looking very likely he's going to leave, the same can't be said for Wilson. At the moment, it's all very much speculation from a journal, and I can't see the action behind it. So I've kept Wilson. However, in the summer, that might change. Wilson's going to get older. And so I haven't put him up there, but I've put him towards the bottom. I don't know if you guys can see B. Sesko. That's Benjamin Sesko. Benjamin Sesko is very much in the same mold of a Calvert-Lewin, of a Dominic Solanke, tall, strong, athletic, can play on either side across the front forwards, but he's mainly a centre forward. I think if Wilson is to go, he's a really good option for us to challenge Isak for that number 9 position, and to push him and to push each other, but also to be able to play together as well across the front forward as well. So I think he's the best out of the names that I mentioned, Solanke and others, and it'd be great to have him. So there's every potential that Wilson could leave. And again, as I'm talking, just imagine the money they're having to spend piling up, because Sesko is not going to go cheap. I think once Barnes is fit, you get Willett back and Joe Linton back, Gordon moves to the right. I think Gordon was always supposed to play on the right, but he's both-footed. He's had an exceptional year on that left wing. He was player of the tournament in the championships for England. His story is incredible. He goes to that right wing, and I think it'll be great. We all know that we want changing it right. I think Miggy goes. I think if not in this window, I think Miggy Almiron goes in the summer window, probably back to Atlanta, very likely, or Saudi Arabia. He's got that option. And I think out of all the right wing, Morgan Gibbs-White isn't just a white. I think out of all the options that we have who can play there, I think Morgan Gibbs-White, of all the rumors that I've heard and the scouting reports that I've read and the clips I followed on, and I've seen him live, I think he's the best option. And for those that I follow Morgan Gibbs-White, he's very much a player that can play through the center. So from DM to CM to AM to right wing. But his focus is in and around that centre midfield and attacking midfield area. He's exceptional. He's press resistant, his first touch, his drive of the ball, his passing. Is the shooting is the only thing that he needs to work on. But as you've seen, like his finishes against Man United, he's definitely working on it. And his ability, like I said, he can rotate with a Bruno Gomes in the midfield area. For instance, if again we're short of midfielders, he can play across in that number 6 role. He can play in a stroke 10 role, which I think is the direction that Eddie Howe's moving in terms of moving Newcastle, involving Newcastle in tactics. But I think he'll take up that right midfield, and he won't be like a winger in the mold of a Gordon or of Almiron. I think he will go into from right into the left side of the midfield and pick up those pockets, pick up those spaces. And just like he saw De Bruyne do, how you see Foden do, I think that's where the game is going, especially, and to be dangerous and to be lethal, to pick up that ball, to hold off to move it quickly to Isak, to move it quickly to Gordon, and to be dangerous, or to move it in himself and be dangerous and shoot. The other reason as well, obviously, Nottingham Forest themselves have been charged by the FA for breach of FFP, and just like Everton, are vulnerable, and might be in a position where they might have to sell in this window rather than wanting to sell in this window. Now we know that they bought Morgan Gibbs out for 40 million. That money seems justified right now. I'm sure they'll aim, if they were to sell, they'd want to sell him for 60 million. But because of the conditions of where they're at now, could Newcastle still get him for 40, 30 million? I don't think Nottingham Forest will do 30 million. That would look shameful for them. But could Newcastle get him for 40 million? With Kieran, with the sale of Kieran Trippier, and if you get a loan obligation to buy option for Onana or Calvin Phillips or both, could he be the third player if Newcastle were to get a third player? That'd be a great buy. That'd be an exceptional window with Onana, Calvin Phillips, and Morgan Gibbs-White, with the returning players from injury. I think Newcastle can attack that season, and it'd be a great rotational player of Gordon. I think he'd want more. I think he'd want to be a first team player. He can certainly challenge Gordon for that. He can challenge Gordon. He can challenge Barnes. And I see Newcastle, like I said, if we get an Onana on top with Calvin Phillips, it gives us the option of having a pivot number 6. He can challenge Bruno Gomes to a certain level. But I think Bruno is still quality. He's a slightly different player. It depends on Bruno plays, but it'd be great to have Morgan Gibbs-White. So that's the player I've put up there that I would like to see at the end of the transfer window. Going into, and if you look at that front forward 4, for that forward 6, Barnes, Isak, Gordon, Gibbs-White, Wilson, possibly Benjamin Sesko. If you can see there, Anderson, Joelinton is pretty good. Lots of athleticism, strength, brain intelligence, and shooting ability. One shot, one kill from Isak. It's a great forward play with a lot of depth in it. Going into the midfield, already spoke of Joelinton and Willock. Tonali, Tonali, I have this feeling that going into the next season, that Tonali is just going to hit it like a train. He's going to be exceptional. With those little things that issues we had about positional play when he first started, they'll be resolved now. He's had time to integrate into this team. I love how Eddie Howe has managed him. He's been training with us. The shame he hasn't been playing matches, but he's been training with us, knowing the system, knowing the culture of Newcastle, of the team, of the coaches. I'm sure he would have felt in his heart and his mind how the team is backing him, despite the fact, obviously, he's been banned as a consequence of his action, but the club have backed him, and he continues to play with us. And so I think he's going to have a great season. We know him. He can play in the right midfield. He can play in the centre midfield. So now with that, Newcastle have options with a Tonali, with a Bruno Gomes, with a potential Onana or Calvin Phillips signing, Gibbs-White. Now you've got real options in that midfield now beginning to bear fruit. Onana, I've already explained his talents and what he does, and so it'd be great to have him there. I think, again, Bruno Gomes, with the introduction of Onana, with the reintroduction of Tonali, possibly Calvin Phillips, Bruno Gomes pushes up. He's going to, I see him in an 8, and a 10 type of role, together role with a Gibbs-White, kind of vying for those positions, but also being the controller of our midfield with, the midfield that was shown earlier with Joelinton, Tonali, and Bruno Gomes. that would be the midfield that I'd want to show. I missed it. I just realized that that's the midfield that'd be great to have. That'd be great to show. That we have with Joe Linton, Tonali, and Bruno Gomes. I think that's a top 4 midfield behind Man City, Liverpool, arguably Arsenal. I think we can have a conversation there, but definitely ahead of Chelsea, ahead of Tottenham. I think our midfield, that midfield will be better. Added with an Onana, added with a Calvin Phillips, potentially lots of mobility and strength, and then the young Lewis Miley, who I think is in the mold of a Carrick. It would be great to have. He'll be the apprentice to Gomes, the apprentice to Tonali. He is, like I said, what Phil Foden is to Guardiola, Lewis Miley will be to Eddie Howe. He's going to be continue under that tutelage. He's already had a season where he's been fully blooded. He's been playing the Champions League. He's assisted goals in the Champions League. He's assisted goals in the time where Derby. He's absolutely exceptional. He's a great breakthrough season, and I see him really taking the reins and taking over. Especially over Longstaff as position, who I think with this type of midfield, not only he's on the bench, but I think he's one of the people that's likely to depart and that's likely to be sold in the summer, in my opinion, because I think Miley will come up. I think all that Miley's waiting to grow is physically grow, continue to grow in his mind and maturity in his play. It's just catching up with the experiences that he's had as a player. And so that's how I see the team progressing. Going into our defense, Burn, as it stands, Botman, Shaw, Livramento with Kieran Trippier left. Ashby returns from Swansea. I haven't seen Harrison Ashby play. Though I've heard bits of good things about him. I've put him as the backup to Livramento. But again, there's a question mark over that. Is he going to be the backup? There's rumours of our right backs as well. So waiting to see that. The main position in defence, apart from the left back, I think, which I've already explained my views on Lewis Hall, I think is the right centre-back position. That right centre-back position is crucial. And it's not because Shaw hasn't been playing well. In fact, this season he's been one of our outstanding players. And the reason why people often think that Sven Botman's carrying Shaw is the opposite. Shaw is carrying Sven Botman, using his experience and just helping Botman continue to develop as a player. But if we have out of all the right centre backs that have been linked, I believe that Malik Thiaw from AC Milan is the best out of the bunch. Strong, athletic, excellent positional play, great passing skills, loves to defend, mentally tough. He's young, but like I said, he's been playing for the Rossoneri, so he's got great experience already. Obviously, a former teammate of Tonali himself, German international. I think with him, not only does with him, for the potential of him, Onana, Botman, or whoever playing in that midfield, we've got a very resolute central area of our pitch, whether we're out of possession or we got these big, tall, strong guys, people aren't getting through, or whether we're on the attack, his pace, his positional awareness, again, helps us to not get caught out by the counter-attack. And I think we'll even be more competitive with the likes of Man City and Liverpool in head-on games, where Man City in particular like to flood the midfield with their defenders, whether it's Ake or Akanji, and push up Foden and push up Kovacic. I think we can meet them head-on with those type of defenders, with Botman, with Thiaw, but also with the big Onana himself, Tonali and others. I think we can be a lot more competitive as well in that rotation there. And I think it'll be exceptional to have him. You guys can see my bench, but well, you can't have 20 players in the field itself, but you can imagine the bench will be a lot more stronger. You just have to add Malik Thiaw to it, Morgan Gibbs-White, Onana, potentially Calvin Phillips, or Onana the other way. Benjamin Sesko, for instance. I've also included Edison. You guys would have seen an earlier clip around Edison and what he can do. That bench looks a lot more stronger, but it also means the potential of a lot more departures. that doesn't necessarily have to be in the summer. So the Almirons, I'm looking at Longstaff, I'm looking at Callum Wilson, I'm looking at Jamal Lascelles, as we've spoken about, Kieran Trippier. I don't think the owners have to wait till the summer for that to happen. Obviously, Howe wouldn't necessarily want too much change or too much shifting about, but with Kieran Trippier leaving, with a potential of Wilson, with the potential of bids in for Jamal Lascelles, it looks like Newcastle are cooking something up already. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the last 5 days in the transfer window go, and what's going to be the end coming in. What's going to be the end squad coming into at the end of this transfer window itself. So you guys can already see there's a potential of a lot of money to be spent, and we know that there's big, huge sponsorship deals on the horizon with Adidas. There's also TV money coming, and the Champions League money coming in, the money coming in from the player sales and stuff like that. So there's a potential of a lot of player turnover as well, and it's not necessarily your Dummets and your Richies whose contracts come at the end, though they are also up for the consideration. I think House still wants to keep some of those guys on for another year. Obviously, Shaw's contract has been extended as well. I think it's the guys that are still sellable. Your Callum Wilsons, your Kieran Trippiers that you can still get decent money for. Your Jamal Lascelles that you can still get decent money for. I think Newcastle, like I said about Lewis Hall, if it frees up the potential for them to learn more players. Journalists have said that Lewis Hall's his loan will likely to become permanent. At this stage, I think that would be a mistake, but there's a higher possibility I'm wrong. If the Newcastle owners know that, I think they can both get Calvin Phillips and Onana, possibly for a loan and an obligation. I think they'll press the button and they'll buy a Hall. They'll sell Kieran Trippier. They'll probably sell a couple of others who are on the horizon. They'll bring in Onana. They'll bring in Calvin Phillips, and possibly bring in a third player. I would want it to be in the forward parts of the pitch, a Morgan Gibbs-White potentially, or right centre back, a Mark in Thal. But I think that's for at the moment, that seems the less likely. I think it's more likely that Newcastle bring in two players. The priority will be that central midfield, and any money that's been accrued from the Kieran Trippier sale or any other sale will be focused in on that, and that's my prediction. So I know that folks, like I said, have been anxious, have been stressed in terms of the reports from the messages from the board and Darren Ills, but I think they have to play a very careful chess. This is chess, not checkers, and the Premier League rival clubs are doing Newcastle absolutely no favors, and this is the type of game they're going to have to play. We just have to hold on to our seats and see what happens. This is my thoughts. This is me decoding the transfer window. I haven't got any inside knowledge, but this is me decoding the transfer window, reading the reports, looking at the scouting reports, listening to content creators, listening to journalists. I'm already afraid to switch off this video, turn on my phone and see what's else going to change. But I'm not afraid, I'm excited. But this is what I think. Let me know what you guys think. How are you guys looking at this transfer window and the owners and the players that could be going in, going out? What do you think will be the likely squad we have at the end of this transfer window? What do you think is going to happen in the summer? How do you think the summer will impact this? Where do you think Newcastle would finish? I think if the squad that I think might happen with the buyers for this transfer window, we've got a strong chance of finishing in the top 6. I really do believe that. It doesn't look likely sitting in 10th. With 10 losses and 9 wins, but Newcastle have turned these things around. I believe they can do it again. But let me know what you guys think. Join me, send in your views, hit the like buttons, do all of that. It really helps the channel. It gets me out there, gets Toon Tactics TV out there. I'm trying to build a product together with you guys that you guys will enjoy. It's a little feedback. and your participation, your comments, they really help, and they help me as well. So guys, until next time, take care. God bless. Have a great evening, great morning, great day. Take care. God bless, guys.